Look, I think it's encouraging the extent of widespread support we've had for this resolution. And bear in mind, these 62 countries are countries that have agreed to co-sponsor the resolution. The resolution is yet to be voted on, but normally co-sponsorship of a resolution is a sign of a very strong support. We've got Japan, we've got India, we've got Russia, we've got the 27 countries of the EU supporting this. And I think what it shows, frankly, is what we've been saying all along, that this resolution, we believe, is in the globe's interest, in all of humanity's interest, in our public health interest collectively, to get to the bottom of what's gone on here with the coronavirus crisis and to understand the lessons we can learn to deal with future such crises.
Is the rub, though, that this could irritate China further and cause them to retaliate once more?
Well, look, I think, we've explained quite clearly that this isn't about any one particular country. It's certainly not a scapegoating exercise. And the fact that we've got 62 nations, almost one-third of the UN membership, co-sponsoring this resolution, we're yet to see it voted upon. I expect, though, when it is voted upon, it'll have very widespread support. And so I think that would, I think that undercuts any argument that this is directed against any one particular country. It's about improving processes and international institutions to deal with future such crises.
So, I mean, you wouldn't expecting tensions to be inflamed further on the back of what's happened with our barley and those meat abattoirs as well. You wouldn't expect there to be further retaliation hitting other sectors?
Well, I think we need to treat each of these trade disputes on a case-by-case basis. They've all got quite, long and complicated histories, particularly the one involving barley and anti-dumping measures. And I think there are particular concerns that have been raised with us by the Chinese authorities. We'll work through methodically and systematically and respond to those concerns. But we seek to have a positive and constructive trading relationship with China. We always do, we always have, and that's not about to change.
The fact that Simon Birmingham's counterpart hasn't picked up the phone to call him, how do you read into that?
Well, look, I think it's important to say here that there would be and there are discussions happening at a number of levels between the Australian system and the Chinese system. There'd be discussions at our WTO missions in Geneva, which is the main basis for resolving these sorts of trade disputes. There'd be discussions between our embassy in Beijing and Chinese counterparts, and then with Chinese officials here in Australia. So, look, I think it's regrettable that the Trade Minister hasn't yet been able to speak to his counterpart, but I think we've shown, and as he demonstrated yesterday, we're open to this sort of dialogue, and we think that open dialogue is the best way to resolve these sorts of issues. So
if the Trade Minister can't get on the phone, I mean, I was going to ask, would it be at about now that the Prime Minister should get on the phone and get a what for?
I don't think so necessarily. I think we've made it very clear that we are keen to discuss and resolve these issues with China. If China isn't prepared to have these discussions right now, that really is a matter for them. But we are, open towards a constructive and positive-looking dialogue with them on these and any number of other issues.
There's been some developments out of China again, in the last 12 to 20 hours. It's admitted to destroying some early samples of coronavirus, and even on the front page of the Australian Financial Review this morning, Dave, China has sought to diffuse tensions and reaffirm its commitment to free trade. So there's a bit of a carrot and a stick approach that appears to be happening here. What do you make of that?
Well, I'd say here that, as indicated by the level of support for the particular resolution, I think there's overwhelming global interest in seeing an inquiry into the origins and causes of this crisis. As I said, that's not a scapegoating exercise, but a constructive and a forward-looking exercise. And I expect China, like most other countries, is sensitive to global opinion and sensitive to perceptions of its global reputation. And most other nations would adjust their attitude and strategy if they're faced with this sort of overwhelming global consensus on an issue and start to behave more constructively. And that may well prove to be the case here.
Just finally, Benjamin Netanyahu and Benny Gantz, it finally looks as though they've signed a power-sharing deal over in Israel. I mean, it's taken a while to get there, hasn't it? So what are your thoughts on this?
It has. I mean, I think it's been 18 months now since Israel's had an effective government or a non-caretaker government. Look, it's a pretty strange relationship. I don't think it's been tried in Israeli politics before, where basically Benny Gantz is a co-prime minister for the first 18 months and is then meant to take on the role of prime minister. Look, I think we just have to see how it unfolds. I mean, I know Benny Gantz well, I know Benjamin Netanyahu well. They're both very committed to Israel's safety and security. They're both good people for Australia to deal with. So whoever's Prime Minister will deal with at the time. But let's hope this coalition can last a bit longer than previous ones.
It looks as though they're going to continue with the annexation of the West Bank. What sort of repercussions might that have? I mean, is that going to be so simple?
No, it's not. And look, I'm quite sceptical about whether this will actually happen. There are things always said in Israel during the course of a campaign which never actually see the light of day. And I think Israel's effectively been in a political campaign for 18 months now, so people outdo one another to appeal to certain blocks of voters. But I think Benny Gantz and Benjamin Netanyahu know that this is immensely complicated and would be, frankly, immensely problematic for a lot of the world, because we're all still committed to seeing a two-state solution, and unless there's a territory for the second state, it's hard to see how a two-state solution can be viable.